the subject of thought forms is quite a vast, it's far more extensive subject than any of you probably anticipate. We can say that everything is a thought form. The Yogācāra philosophy is that all is but thought constructs, including the material physical plane that we live in, your physical forms, your bodies that you live in. These are all thought constructs. So how do these thought constructs come into expression, into being? And my book, The Esoteric Cosmology and Modern Physics, explains that from our esoteric point of view. And modern physics explains the appearance of phenomena, but they're not thinking in terms of thoughts or the crystallization of thoughts, whereas my book does. And it points out and explains in some detail how all phenomena in this universe comes into appearance as a result of thoughts. And then the extension of that particular book is The Secret Doctrine, the astrological and numerological keys to the Secret Doctrine, volumes 1 and 2. That's really just an extension of the Esoteric Cosmology book, because I needed that background before I could do the Secret Doctrine book. So when you look at the standards of Dhyan, which I'm making the commentary on the Secret Doctrine, well, a Dhyan means standards of meditation. And these standards of meditation is all about the way Manvantara manifests. Manvantara is the cyclic appearance of a universe. When I speak, or when we speak of a universe, you can think of your physical form as a universe. And what is it that governs the entire physical form? It's your thoughts and your emotions, the desire mind, karma manas, and that overriding thought emotional aspect of you then conditions the cellular constitution of your body. And if any of you have any sort of concept of modern physics or science, then you know that even an atom is largely empty space. It's basically just energy fields quantized into forms that come into manifestation or into the visible universe and then disappear again. You know, E equals mc squared, that's Einstein's formula, is basically just pointing as that energy and matter interrelated. So we're talking about this motion in and out of subjective space into phenomenal space. And when it comes, as I said, to appearance of the atom web, it's quarks, and scientists barely understand quarks, that I've been studying them for a long time, because they're also moving in and out of objective and empirical space. When we look around us, you know, anything that's around us is just billions upon billions upon billions of atoms. And the atoms are these quantized vectors that is energy moving into form and then form moving back into energy. And this subjective space is what we esoterically just call the ethers. And the scientists have got their own name, they call them quantum vacuum or something like that. They have their own descriptions. Now, my book, Esoteric Cosmology, goes into all of this in quite detail, and it goes into unus and quarks and the way the quarks are organized into a hexagonal pattern and so forth. And then I have my own terminology, which I use and explain the theory of gravity using unus, which atoms that exist on the mental plane. And then they combine in successive larger amounts or larger number of combinations of atoms until eventually they appear. The combination of 18 of these atoms eventually makes a hydrogen nucleus. This concept of thoughts and the way thoughts cause forms is also the subject of magic, of science, you know, of all ritual magic, of all meditators. And all that a meditator is, of course, is learning how to properly organize thoughts and to eventually be able to produce phenomena on the physical plane. We call this mechanism siddhis, psychic powers. So when you're doing your meditations, all you're learning to do is to eventually become a creator. Now, I started off with the phrase local universe or the universe. And sometimes when I'm writing my books, I'm thinking in terms of when I use the term universe. Now, that's a vast space. And those of you that have looked at the astronomical pictures of galaxies and the way, and all their interrelationship of the galaxies, you can see just how vast the universe is. And that particular sort of scientific way of looking at it. And most people, when we think of universe, we're looking at that vast space. And each galaxy contains billions of suns. Our own galaxy, the Milky Way, I think it's 4 or 5 billion suns in it, and our little star is just one of them on one of the arms. It's nowhere near the center of the galaxy. And then there's billions of such galaxies, and then there's clusters of galaxies and super galaxies, and the galaxies, when they've drawn maps of the universe, are in the form of filaments in cosmic space. And those filaments are very similar to what we see as nadis. Now, that's one way of using the term cosmos. I don't like to go that far. And of course, with our esoteric viewpoint, we're not just looking at those galaxies, those stars, but we're looking at a multidimensional universe. We're looking at galaxies, for instance, that on the etheric plane, on the astral plane, some that are coming into incarnation, some that are disincarnating, going into what we call pralaya. And then there's the other planes of perception. In my book, Esoteric Cosmology, I'm talking about 7 levels of these levels of galaxies, if you wish. Because when one's using the term God, I always put quotation marks around it, that word, because it's open to interpretation. I'm pointing out that God is far vaster, and it's got nothing to do with this little speck of dust that we call the Earth. And within cosmic space, the sun is something probably part of a quark. It's just so small. And it goes into lots of philosophical conundrums when we're going that far vast. The Big Bang, which those of you that know about science, that's the way they talk about the origination of the universe. It all comes from nothing, which the Christians are very happy with, certainly the Catholic Church, because that's creationism. And in my books, I say, well, there's no such thing as nothing. Nothing comes out of nothing. So we can go into this particular aspect of it, thoughts. How does a whole universe come into being? What is God? How does a God create the manifestation of the universe? So you can see that the question of thought forms is far vaster, because it goes into the entire speculative world of Hindu philosophy, of the yugas, of all the deities, the Christians, of eschatology, all the other forms of empiricism, and of course the scientific speculations, Big Bang versus sort of steady state theory, or the electric universe theory. So there's lots and lots of theories about how things come into existence. But the esoteric is that it's all but a condensation of thought. And as you're learning to meditate, so you are learning to become a God, become a logos. Though I use the term logos also because I like it. It's from the St. John's Gospel. The opening statements of St. John's Gospel was, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And it goes on like that. And the term word is the translation of the Greek term logos. And then the concept in the beginning was the word. That is what we're talking about when we're talking about the building of thought forms. Everything is done by means of mantra, word. And words are the condensation of thoughts, or an expression of thoughts, or the outward expression of thoughts. You can see this entire philosophical quagmire when one even starts this whole subject, because all of the religions and the creation myths come into it. And all the religions have their own versions of how things come into being, but it's thoughts. Now, because the universe is so vast and it's multidimensional, when I use the term universe, I think in terms of, or I like to use, or to think in terms of, or write in terms of what I call the local universe. In other words, that portion of our particular Milky Way galaxy where the sun finds its place. And when you look up into the night sky, those stars that are twinkling up there, they're all the brothers and sisters to the sun. It's basically those visible stars, or that can be seen with a small binoculars. And so it's the local portion of the galaxy, and I like to talk in terms of that. And we, in our philosophy, in the esoteric philosophy, deity or the logos that embodies that portion of the Milky Way galaxy is an entity such as you or I, but transposed out there in subjective space or cosmic space, whom DK calls the one about whom naught can be said. I shorten that to the word that logos. And it basically means that all those stars you can see with your naked eye or with small binoculars are part of the body of manifestation of such a great being. And then the constellation of stars are organs within the body of that being. And when we're talking of organs, we are thinking in terms of chakras, the major chakras, the minor chakras. Then there's also the physical constitution, the lungs, the heart, and so forth. And the ancients, when you look at a star chart, then you have all these names: Aquila the eagle, Orion the hunter, Taurus the bull, Columba the dove, so forth. There's lots of animal figures, and there's lots of inanimate objects too, like Ara the altar, and many other things like that. So you've got those ancient names that are used on our star maps. They didn't come by chance. They were actually seeded into the minds of the early philosophers or the sailors that went into the southern hemisphere to make sure that the names that are down actually correspond correctly to the true esoteric functions of that particular constellation. So hierarchy made sure that it's all been properly encoded in exoteric form. And it's again another type of thought form production. Now, one can go from that logos to all those stars, and we can say, well, that's the universe for us. After that, things get into abstracts. One can say, well, that logos is a companion with lots and other similar entities that embody star systems or whole galaxies, many constellations of stars, and they are either male or female in constitution within our galaxy. And then one can look at the other galaxies and say they're all similarly composed. Then you can think of groupings of galaxies and so forth, and one can work out going backwards in time. And as you go backwards in time, from our esoteric point of view, you're going towards the Dark Brotherhood. You're going towards dark space. And of course, scientists have discovered dark space and dark energy as well, which didn't record manifest in their observational techniques, except by the effects. So there's much to learn. But when you go inwards towards where we are now from that logos, then you're still going to different concepts of a universe, a galaxy, to a dat logos, to constellations of stars, to a singular star, such as our solar system, and then our Earth, and then you yourself, a logos to everything in your body, is where I started. You also, if you wish, that logos to the cellular constitution of your body, to the atoms and all the ways that the atoms combined into molecules and then groups of molecules forming the cells in the body, and then the cells themselves have organs, organelles, that gives you an idea just how vast it is. And from this you get the occult aphorism, that which is within is also without. That which is without is also within. And our Earth and our solar system is actually uniquely placed in our galaxy in order to be able to observe that far distant space, inner space as well. If it was further in towards the center of the galaxy, we couldn't do this. We'd be surrounded by billions of bright stars. It's only because where we are placed on the outer edge, or near the outer edge of one of the spiral arms, that we could see into dark space. And everything to do with our solar system and the placing of the Earth allows this aphorism to be true on all levels of expression. So this is more or less just a preamble for you to understand, just how vast the subject of thought form is, and that you that are meditators are learning to become a dat logos eventually. I mean, it's a long way before any of us can become a logos, but that's the evolution of all of us, is to eventually manifest, just like you're manifesting now with organs and chakras in your body. And then the organs and chakras in your body then will be stars and groupings of stars, constellation of stars, the planets that inhabit the stars, and all the lives that incarnate into those planets and planetary spheres. What is now an atomic life then will be a human life in that particular time, when you are a logos that big. Everything evolves together. And you're learning with your meditation world to all the laws of thought, all of the mantra, if you wish, that will hold such a star system into place and to evolve it all in accordance with a cosmic direction. And we go through countless cycles of learning, first of all, learning to think. Thought forms predispose that you have the ability to think. And that predisposes that there's consciousness. And it also predisposes, from our perspective, that consciousness is inherent throughout the universe. We're not the first human units that evolved in the universe. And we're certainly not the last. Everything is alive. And that's the difference also between our esoteric philosophy and modern science, is that we say everything is alive, including minerals, with the atomic structure that compose the desk, your physical form, your car, whatever. These things are all still alive. Of course, the level of sentience is at a very, very elemental level, but they are evolving. Eventually, the mineral kingdom will evolve into a plant kingdom, and the plant kingdom educates the mineral kingdom by absorbing it into its constitution as its nutrients. It absorbs carbon dioxide from the air and nutrients from the soil, and converts it into plant consciousness. Of course, plants don't have consciousness, but they're controlled by the Deva kingdom. They embody Devas. Everything is embodied Deva. Now, Deva are just the elemental lives. And the Devas themselves are evolving towards consciousness. So you can see that when we're talking about thought forms, we're really talking about, again, a vast philosophy. And it is, as I said, the philosophy of how things come into being and what things are. As I said, consciousness is what rules in order to create thought forms, and they are elemental lives that are molded by thoughts. We have different names for them, the Agni Chaitans, the Agni Syrians, brownies, the sylphs, the salamanders, all of these diva entities, the angelic kingdom, the lesser ones anyway. As I said, they also evolve because they're units of consciousness or units of sentiency. But the human kingdom where it is now is very highly evolved. And in our philosophy, you can think of animal man. We call that stage of evolution Lemurian. I don't want to go into the concept of human evolution at this stage, where thoughts as per se didn't exist. They just evolved out of the animal kingdom, and they're learning basic survival skills, physical plane aggression, how to stave off attacks from very, very aggressive carnivores, saber-toothed tigers or whatever you want to think of in those days. And it was earlier than that as well. So there was a massive human toll of the animal kingdom upon the humans. But the mind it's basically just instinctual still. So there was some sexual instinct more than anything else, and the instinct to survive. And so it evolved from that instinctual stage to eventually developing emotions and the emotional thoughts, and then the pure empirical intellectual abilities that a lot of human beings have now. I can't say all of humanity, because most humanity are emotional in their thinking. That's the great majority. There are the intelligentsia and the scientists, etc., that can think properly, but most are not. They're swayed by the emotions. And in the path of meditation, the first thing you learn to do is to control the emotions. The emotions are animalistic. They are of the animal kingdom. Dogs, cats, if you wish, think of them. There you get the genesis of emotions. It's only when you can manifest empirical thoughts, define your thoughts, that you can build thought forms, that you can build into your thoughts the elemental lives and direct them towards a purpose. Now, of course, whenever all of you think, you don't think that that's what you're doing, but that happens automatically.